Welcome to another episode of the Fanzone podcast. Your home for all things Bolton Wanderers, up the Trotters, the Northwest's #1 podcast.
Good evening, ladies and gents. Welcome back to another episode of the preview show brought to you by us here at the Fanzone podcast. We're delighted to welcome you back to episode 32 of the preview show, sponsored by Leanne over at Loving My Socials, which is the place to go for all of your graphic branding, graphic design, social media marketing, all of that good stuff. If you own a business, head over to Loving My Socials and they will sort you out with all of that good stuff. But this evening we are joined by Charles from It's All Cobblers to Me. How are you this evening, Charles?
Hello, mate. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much. You well?
Yes, not too bad. Thank you. Not too bad at all. It is a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. And we are, of course, joined by Ange. Ange, how are you this evening?
I was just wondering whether it's quite as wet in Northampton as it is up here, because it's proper flooding territory up here. So I think there has been some calls of, do you think will the match be on tomorrow?
The match will be on tomorrow. While it has been a bit wet, most of the rain was yesterday. So it seems like that rain is just moving northwards. So you should be fine. We were a bit worried about Saturday's game at home to Mansfield being maybe off because of all the rain last week, but the pitch looked great. So I don't think there's any concerns for tomorrow night. So you'll be fine. Get on the M6 and you'll go and watch a match.
I was going to say as well, yeah. So Chris has just put it in the chat about you've got that mad hill where you can see into the ground, can't you? So yeah, if anybody's planning on making a mission down that hill, just be careful.
Yeah, definitely be careful. There is a big puddle near where the bus stop is at the top of that hill. There's always been a big puddle up there, and what they've done is they've drilled a trench going down to try and siphon all the water down that one bit. So if you really want to go for a mudslide, head to the bus stop and then find the trench and then throw yourself down it. That'll be your quickest way into the ground, I reckon.
If any of you Wanderers fans fancy that, then go and get yourself. And if you do end up taking that route, please video it and tag us in it. We'd love to give you a shout out on the next podcast if you're daft enough to try that. But a very warm welcome to you all this evening. Thank you to you all who are in the chat and active as always. And special thanks to our channel members who are with us this evening. David, Brandon, massive shout out to you. You are absolute troopers. But we'll get stuck into this evening's episode of the preview with our season so far. So, a rocky road then for Bolton Wanderers heading into this season. Wasn't the greatest start that I think we were kind of expecting. The hangover from Wembley very much a contributing factor to that, it would seem. However, that being said, 2 wins in our last 2 league fixtures make for pretty good reading. An impressive home fixture and Reading, and then obviously an away performance that was a little bit unusual in that we didn't have all of the ball, but 3 points is 3 points, and we're happy with that. I think it's safe to say, Ange. Would you agree?
Oh yes, definitely. I think we had something like, was it 28% possession or something? Like what? Wow. Just completely goes against everything that we've ever really tried to play like before. Possession-based football is what we do, but do you know what? I will take that. I will take 28% away from home and a 2-0 win. Absolutely.
It was very, very, very different. It was a stark contrast from what we're used to. And it felt a little bit like role reversal in that Crawley, a team with all of the ball, failed to really put much of an effort towards goal. Nathan Baxter had a very quiet afternoon. I think he spent more time fiddling with his sun cap than he did trying to save any attempts on his goal. And yet we were hitting Crawley on the counter-attack and ended up winning 2-0, which felt very much like something that Bolton Wanderers would have been subject to a little earlier on in the season or even last season. But over in Northampton then, talk us through your season so far and sort of How has it lived up to expectations? Obviously, you're currently sitting 17th. You're on 8 points after 7 games played. Wanderers not doing too much better, only on 2 more points in the same amount of games. But talk us through that. Talk us through how it's been so far for you.
Yeah, it's not been too bad. I mean, it's been a bit up and down. There's obviously been, wins and defeats and draws in the mix, as we would probably expect. Some of the games that we've lost, we might have been looking at actually those being the ones to win. And then the games that we've won are the ones that we weren't maybe expecting it to happen.
You had a great result at Huddersfield, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is it. We went there with no expectation really as a fan base of getting a result there. And then we were absolutely brilliant, probably, until Saturday. And I know this will sound odd on the back of a 2-0 defeat, but until Saturday, it was our best performance of the season. And then Saturday was possibly even better, although we didn't put it in the back of the net and we conceded twice. So it's we're in a bit of a transition at the moment, I think, this season, because we've got we're moving in terms of what type of players that we actually have on the books at the club. We've still got an awful lot of the players that we've had for the last few seasons, so those that got us promoted from League Two. And then what we had last year, we had a little bit of extra investment into the club, probably about 6 to 8 months ago now. A Jersey-based businessman called Nigel LeCain came in and popped some money in the coffers for us. And we've seen a better quality of player added to the ranks. So we've kind of got some really like next level players along with those that we've had for a period of time. And there's almost an imbalance in the squad in that respect, because, and this is no disrespect to the players that are still here from the last few years, it's just that some of those players that we brought in are noticeably a higher standard of player. And so I think we kind of look at it and go, attacking wise, we've got some real good quality players, Tyler Roberts, etc. And it's maybe not quite reciprocated in every single position on the pitch. So we're, like I say, in that transition where some of our players can play really well, high technical, skillful football, whereas the others are just that one little step behind them. And so you get some players not quite meeting their passes, for example, that maybe the higher quality players would expect them to. So we're having the season, I would say, so far that we were expecting, maybe points wise, just not necessarily picking up those points in the games that we thought we might do. But it's been a decent start to the season so far. So quite happy. I maybe wish that we played you a couple of weeks ago rather than now. But having said that, I've got this belief in this squad. We've got a much deeper squad this year than we've ever really had for the last few years, and maybe in even longer than that. So there should be more availability, if that makes sense, to be able to change things up and maybe rest players when we need to, when they are, in need of, 90 minutes on the bench rather than actually running around the pitch, for example. We're not necessarily having to rely on just 11 players to get us through a whole season. So it's going to be interesting what happens tomorrow night in terms of who lines up in our 11, because John Brady, our manager, has talked about managing minutes. He seems to say that in every second sentence at the moment. He talks about players being in the red zone a lot and things like that that are a bit frustrating as a fan, but I understand what he's trying to say and setting expectations of we can't necessarily play the players that we as fans would deem as being our strongest 11 every single game. This will, I suppose Saturday really was the start of a really busy next sort of 4 or 5 weeks where we're playing Saturday, Tuesday. We've had the luxury, as we always do, of having the majority of August as being just every Saturday because we can't win a cup game. So it's out in the first round of every single cup. That's the way to do it, Northampton Town. Lovely job. Give yourselves a rest at the start of the season. Why not? But now we're getting into that meaty part of the early season where the games come thick and fast. So it may well mean that we see some chopping and changing in our lineup each week. This is the home game, so I would expect us to put out the strongest 11 that we can. But then we've got Wrexham away up on Saturday, and it's that sort of thing of, well, obviously we want to be competitive in both games. We're not going to go out there to, lose one to go and win the other. But I think generally speaking, managers would probably rather win their home games more than they would. I don't think essentially what I'm saying is that they would put out a weaker 11 in the home game to be stronger away from home. They'd do that the other way around if they were going to do it. So it'll be interesting to see whether we go with a similar starting lineup to what we had against Mansfield on Saturday tomorrow night or not. But yeah, season as a whole so far, pretty happy.
It's interesting you say that in terms of the home and the away thing, because I mean, looking at your away record so far, you've had some pretty, respectful performances in there. Obviously, a point away at Barnsley, I think for most teams in this division is probably a good point, a hard-earned point. Obviously, the Huddersfield result was exceptional for any team in this division again. And apart from that, sort of a blip on the opening day of the season in seemed like a tightly contested 1-0 defeat.
Yeah.
Your away record has been pretty good. The home form, I think the only result I look at in that and think possibly could have done better is Burton, 0-0. But that being said, I think you mentioned both teams. You mentioned Northampton's performances in the last two games have sort of gone above and beyond what you would expect. And I think for us, performances levels have just got to about what we were expecting at the start of the season. So it looks like it's making for an interesting game. And what are your thoughts on heading into Northampton? I mean, it's critical, I think, for me that we get 3 points. I think it has to be another improved performance. It has to build on what we're doing. Where's your head at?
Yeah, I mean, I went down last season, and it was a really tense 1-1. It ended up, didn't it? And it was you absolutely. It was a tough match. It was a really tough match. And if, like you said, you've got a bit of more squad depth and you've kind of improved slightly with some of your players, then it's going to be potentially even trickier. And like we've said, we've just won 2 on the bounce, and I think April was the last time we did that. And you could say actually May, June, July, you can't really count, but for us it's not a great stat, to be fair, is it? So we absolutely need to be winning 3 on the bounce. But I am under no illusions, especially if it is a wet pitch, which hopefully it won't be too bad if you had your rain a couple of days ago or yesterday or whatever it was. Then yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be a very competitive, and once again, not 100% sure what we're going to start with lineup wise, because we're the same where we've just had Arsenal away, Crawley away, you away, playing on Saturday at home. So we've had 4 in whatever it is, 8 days or whatever. So it's whether we will mix it up a little bit. I'm thinking more so the front 2 rather than anything else, because at the back we haven't really got many options. We're a bit light down the back. So yeah, I'm wondering myself how we're gonna line up, but I suppose we'll soon see.
Absolutely. It's been Saturday, well, not necessarily Tuesday, obviously we played Arsenal on the Wednesday, but it's been midweek fixtures since then, and they're coming thick and fast. Obviously we've got Northampton away, and then it's a home visit from Shrewsbury, and then it's the cup game against Aston Villa's under-21. So there's a lot of fixtures here, and I think it is inevitable that we'll see some rotation. Obviously Collins and McAtee came on and weren't the starters, so it's possible that they'll make the cut, but I think it'll be interesting to see. Just before we move on to our injury update section, thank you very much to Chris Jenks, who's given us a £5 donation. He said, pass this on to the groundsman over at Northampton. unfortunately, we can't redirect those donations as much as we'd probably love to. But thank you very much. It is an absolute pleasure. And let us know in the chat if you're heading down to Northampton and you're making the trip. Let's see how many of you are off on your travels. But we will move into our injury update section.
Ben, just before you do this bit, can I just apologise to everyone for my crazy camera? Like, it keeps chopping half my head off. If I look somewhere, it follows me. We tried to sort it out before we went live, and so apologies if it's just doing its own thing. So, yeah,
it's got a mind of its own. But thankfully, the injury list and the apparent crisis we had at the start of the season seems to be subsidising a little bit, and there are people coming back, which is lovely. And to my knowledge, there is nobody that has either mysteriously fallen downstairs and dislocated toes. There is no big sneezes that have put people out. There is no phantom ghost running around the Wanderers Lost Stock training camp, injuring people just for the fun of it. And it feels like people are slowly getting back to full fitness. I don't think Clyde Lolos is very far away at all. Mendes Gomez, I think, has been back training and things are looking positive for him. And thankfully, people are coming back, people are staying match fit, and people aren't disappearing from the squad. Fingers crossed it stays that way. Over in Northampton now, what are things looking like from your point of view, from an injury perspective?
Fairly similar, to be honest. We had a few coming back on Saturday that were on the bench, and then a few of them even got some minutes on the pitch towards the end of the game as well. So the likes of Jordan Willis, who have been out for a few weeks, and Ben Fox in midfield, they've started coming back, which is good to see. Tom Eaves, who was, I suppose, really our original marquee signing of the summer. So before we got Tyler Roberts in and Tariq Fosu, he was our, oh, look at that. That's a bit of a step up to what we've had before. He's not played a minute yet since pre-season because he's been injured. Positive news is that he's on the grass now and looking like he might even make at least the bench for tomorrow night. We hope. I mean, we've been told that a lot this season as well, though. So, don't hold me to it if he's not in the team sheet whatsoever. But that's a bit of a positive. The one player that's definitely out is Patrick Brough. He broke his leg in that game at Huddersfield. Somehow, I say courageously, idiotically, I would say, stayed on the pitch despite the fact that he'd broken his leg. I don't know how serious that break is. That's all we know. We don't have any other information. He basically came on as a sub towards the end when we were trying to shore up the defence. We went to a back five and he went to left wing back with Luke Mbete going to play the left-sided of the three of the centre-backs. And almost immediately, within 5 minutes, got crunched. And, spent the rest of the game, a good sort of 10, 15 minutes or so, basically hobbling around up front on his own. And we were down to 10 men as well after our right fullback got sent off for conceding a penalty, second yellow. And, he basically just kept sort of wandering, but towards the ball as best as he could to try and make himself busy and pester the Huddersfield defensive line. But yeah, he broke his leg, it turns out. So God knows how he managed to stay on the pitch. So he's going to be out for a considerable amount of time. The majority of our squads are fit. Although, as I said before, John Brady likes to talk about managing minutes, and he especially likes the term the red zone at the moment, and he's not talking about the NFL. So it gets a bit annoying with that. But I get where he's coming from. Players playing a lot of minutes. They're going to need a rest at some point because we've got better depth this year than we've had before. Brady sort of therefore is looking at it and saying, well, we've got players this year that can actually come in and fill those holes for a period of time while we make sure that we don't overexert some of the players that are maybe playing on that thin edge of fitness. So there were no, from what I'm aware of and what we've been told, not that we get told an awful lot about injuries, but there were no knocks picked up in the game on Saturday. So we should be, on paper, we could field that same team again. I think the one difference that if there was going to be just one change to that side, which is what I would personally like to see, then it would be Odemeo coming back in, having served his 1-match suspension at right back for Aaron McGowan, who's been great for us. But I think Odemeo is probably first choice. He's a bit quicker, a little bit more attacking than McGowan is, and therefore I think is preferred at the moment. But yeah, apart from Patrick Brough, I think that's it. There might be somebody else that for some reason is eluding me, but they wouldn't have been in the squad the last couple of weeks anyway. So it's not like that they were going to return tomorrow night. So the only one that you'd hope to return would be Tommy's potentially, but I'd expect Odemeo in the team as an actual change. Maybe Tommy's on the bench and he comes off and actually shows us that he can play football and not in the physio room. Would be quite nice.
Yeah, I think the only new-ish injury update for the Whites is obviously Chris Farino, who picked up a knock against Arsenal. Well, a bit more than a knock, it would seem. After,
a little bit more than a knock, Benji.
Yeah, just a little bit. Everett said he'll be out for, I think he said a substantial amount of time. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds about right. Anyway, it's usually how it goes for Wanderers. So he picked up a nasty hamstring injury against Arsenal, so he'll be out for a little while. But David Jones has politely reminded me that Lolos is in the squad tomorrow and will be available. I missed the article from Mark Isles before. I have just seen it. So things are getting back to somewhat like normal for Wanderers. One thing I did want to pick up on, you mentioned there Luke Mbete, who was actually at Bolton Wanderers. Don't think he made himself a fan favourite. I think it's safe to say. He looked okay at times, but I think we were a very competitive squad at that time, and I don't think he was quite up to where he was needed to be. How's he getting on for you, though?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I would say is just be careful, Bolton fans, what you say, because Huddersfield fans laid into him quite a bit, saying he was rubbish when he was on loan with them. Really, really, gave him a bit of stick in the build-up to the game on social media. And then he rubbed that all in their faces. So he has been really good since he signed for us. You can tell that he's been playing in the Manchester City Academy. He's fairly good on the ball. I think the thing is that you've got to, and I've got to realise this as well, is that Northampton and teams like Bolton and Huddersfield, there's two different levels there, and we are traditionally below you in those levels. So when we would turn around and go, well, actually, he's a really good player for us. He's great and he's better than the other left back options. That's relative to us. To you guys, you've maybe had you've definitely had much better players in the past because you've been in the Premier League and the Championship before. So therefore, you will be, I suppose, a bit more judgmental in the fact of your standards, I guess, than we are. But for us, he's been great. He's been really good. He's shown real composure on the ball. He likes to attack. He had a really good game on Saturday, and Neil, who is one of my co-hosts on the podcast, had put a bet on him to score, and it was almost like he had seen that betting slip and was trying his hardest to win the money for Neil, because he had about 3 efforts on goal. One of them was a pretty ridiculous wave of his foot that didn't connect and didn't really do anything. He had a header from a corner, and then he had another chance in the second half, which actually was a really good kind of run down the left-hand side, and then he cut inside to then try and get a shot away. It got blocked. But, to see your left-back doing that, it's quite pleasing from our perspective. So I thought he had a really good game, and he's been quite commanding whenever he has played. I think he obviously is the better left-back defensively than we've got at the moment. Ali Koike is the other player that I couldn't think of who is definitely injured, who's one of our
Hi.
other left backs. There we go. Knew it had come to me. He's definitely not going to be available. I can't remember exactly what injury he's got, whether it's a hamstring or a knee injury. I can't remember which one it is now. But whereas Ali Koike is very attacking and has lots of pace as well. He scored a fantastic goal towards the end of last season, picking it up inside our own penalty area and then taking it the whole way down the other end to then slot it home in the last minute of the game. It was a great goal to watch. He's got pace to burn. But defensively, he's not really that sharp, I would say. He relies on his pace a lot, essentially. If he gets beat, then he will chase them down and he will normally get a block in or get a decent tackle in. But in terms of actual defensive positioning, I guess he's not the best. And Mbete is definitely an improvement in that facet of the game. So I'm more than happy with how Mbete is performing this season for us. And I think with his age, with the fact that, yes, he's had loans at this level before and the Championship as well. I think he will only get better. I'm not saying that he's going to make it into the Man City first team or anything daft like that, but I can see him becoming a good, solid top-end League One player, at least, I would have thought, in the future.
Yeah.
Well, no offence, but I hope he has a stinker tomorrow.
Absolutely. We will now move on to our pub watch. So for those of you who said you were going in the chat before, you can find out where you can get your hands on some ale. So, Charles, the Wanderers fan base are certainly a thirsty bunch. Not sure how many of you will be going crazy on a Tuesday night, but if anyone does want to sort of get their hands on some ale, where can they go?
I think, to be honest, on Tuesday night, the best bet is actually going to be within the stadium, because the Six Hills Tavern, which is the pub at the top of that hill, that will more than likely be home fans only. It was on Saturday for Mansfield's visit. The Walter Tull, which is the pub that is essentially next door to that, has closed down. So that won't be open. Frankie and Benny's always used to be like the away place to go and drink, but they've now gone into administration. So whether they're going to be open, I don't know. It's one of those which is going to be a bit difficult. There is a bar for the away end itself, which is actually outside on the back of the away end, that you'll be able to get drinks from. There's also the kiosks inside the stadium as well. But that's probably going to be your best bet, unless the Six Hills Tavern decides that you lot are friendly enough and they'll let you in. I know you're friendlier than Mansfield. I know that for a fact, but I don't know whether the landlord will know that. That's the question. I think the thing is that whenever, because I don't know whether you have sold out the away end, but I'm sure there's going to be quite a lot of you coming down. I know it's a Tuesday.
Was it about 800? I think we sold.
Something
Not
like
massive for us, but when we've just had Arsenal and Crawley on the road as well, I think, and
that's fair enough. I mean,
I don't think it was ever going to.
So you've pretty much sold out the initial allocation that you'll have for the South Stand, which I think holds 900. So if you've got 800 odd, then you're pretty close to that. You're just not getting the overflow in the side. But I mean, that will mean that potentially the police might even turn around and say no to letting you in into a pub. I know that that's what they've done before, which is annoying, especially for those of you that aren't looking to make any trouble whatsoever and you just want to go to the football match and have a pint. So the away end is probably going to be your best bet. It'll be open at least an hour before kickoff, and you'll be able to go in and get a beer there.
I think, and I'm not sure whether this is because last season it was a Saturday, and for some reason it did get a bit rowdy, but at half time it served us. So in the away end, and we did have a drink up at the top of the hill. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean
we'll
that probably would have been the Sixfields Tavern if you were just in
yes,
in a pub.
Yeah.
I mean, there's loads. We're on a leisure complex. So therefore there's loads of retail opportunities. You've got Wagamama's is there. I know that's not a place that you're going to go and have just a drink or whatever, but you've got places up there that you can go and eat food and you can go and get a drink and while you're eating and stuff like that. So there are options available. I would just be not cautious as such, but don't expect to necessarily be allowed into the pub. They may well be absolutely fine with you, but they've not put anything on social media to say no, and they did do that ahead of Saturday's game to say it would be home fans only because they were asking people to provide their tickets to show them that they were home fans and stuff like that, which is a bit over the top, in my opinion. But yeah, otherwise, you're probably looking in town itself, so a bus ride away, and then you can go to any number of the pubs that are in the town centre. If you essentially head towards sort of the Market Square area in the centre of town, there's plenty of bars and pubs around there that you can go and just take your choice in, including your normal sort of O'Neill's and Weatherspoons and the like. So there's plenty of places for you to go, but it might just be a bus ride away back in the town centre.
Fair enough. Absolutely. If you want to go and get your hands on some ale, there you have it. Plenty to choose from, but your best bet might be in the ground. We will for now close off on our last segment of the evening, which is What's the Score? Now, Ange, you don't do score predictions, so I've got a little bit of an idea. Let's do a confidence rating, 1 through 10, 1 being a loss, 5 being a draw, 10 being a win.
A 6.
A 6. Okay, that's a good enough. That's maybe like a 2-1 if we were to convert, but we won't.
I can neither confirm nor deny that. I would be a 6 on a confidence scale. I keep trying to get my head in the window. Sorry.
Bolton fans, get yours in the chat. We've had a couple in already, but we'll hand over to you, Charles, first. Northampton camp, what are things looking like for you? How confident are you?
Confident. I don't know. I'm a realist when it comes to these kind of things. A good result would be a draw for us. I think that if we were to lose, that would be 3 home defeats on the bounce, which would not be good at all. I just think that we need to make sure that we go and get a goal early. We seem to be a team that will come out and have a dominant sort of first 5 or 10 minutes, but we don't seem to ever take advantage of that and actually go and get the ball in the back of the net. So we need to start making it count when we've got the ball, I think, especially early doors. If we can go 1-0 up, I mean, we're not the Northampton of old. I don't think that we would sit down or sit back rather and just try and defend a 1-0 lead. So we would still try and go and get more, but you're a good side. I know that you've not had the best start to the season. You are a good team for this division. I mean, the one thing that I would say is that I would absolutely love it if we beat you. Yes, I said that as if I was Kevin Keegan, but not because of Bolton, but Ian Evatt. He really, really annoys me. He's one of those. Oh, well, I know you guys
even annoys our fans
with him. I just remember the game last year at Sixfields. I was actually in hospitality with my dad for his birthday at the time, and we were able to sort of be quite. Well, I think I got my dad to go out with the team, onto the pitch to get the photo taken and all of that with the sponsors, and I was waiting down right at the bottom of the stand waiting for my dad so I could walk him back up to his seat. And I was stood right behind Ian Evatt, and we have kids from schools or football clubs, local football clubs, that wave flags and stuff as the teams come out. And these kids were all being sort of moved off the pitch to go walk round to where their seats were. And Ian Everett just went to grab one of their hats off their head as a bit of and I mean, cheekiness, bit of cheekiness, but he completely missed. He didn't get the hat whatsoever. And it just looked a little bit silly and a little bit wrong. And you could see the embarrassment in Ian Everett. And I enjoyed it when that happened. But, he's a character, isn't he, Ian Everett? He played for us on loan many, many years ago. And I just don't think he's ever forgiven himself for having to stoop so low. I just, if we beat you, it won't. I won't revel in it as much because we've beaten Bolton and all of that. It'll be more that we've beaten Ian Everett. That would make me happy.
Fair dues.
Absolutely. And I think I'm gonna go for a 2-0 Wanderers win. I think it needs to be, and I will be. I'm not going to say happy with the draw, but I wouldn't be devastated. Colin Yates is going to be absolutely seething if he hears me saying this.
He would be furious.
He would indeed. But thank you all very much for watching this evening's episode of the preview show. We absolutely appreciate it. Thanks very much again for joining us, Charles. We appreciate that.
No problem at all, guys. Have a good day down in Northampton if you're going, and hopefully you're crying all the way back up the M6 at the end of the night.
It's been a pleasure. If you want to find out any more about Cobblers to me, then check the link in the description and you can see them over there. But until the next time, thank you for watching the Fanzone podcast. See you on Sunday.
Like and subscribe.
What Anne says. Do it.